Hey, what's going on, guys? Realm Gaming here. Wanted to make a quick video, just a quick guide here on Restoration Druid. I know it's a little bit of a complicated class. They've got a lot kind of going on for them, especially considering it's a bit of a proactive healer rather than a reactive healer. So it can be a little bit more difficult to play than some of the other healing classes, such as like a Restoration Shaman. Just kind of going over some of the highlights from Wowhead here. Some of the strengths of the class. We can scale our healing up to pretty much any number, especially once you factor in your mastery. So the way the mastery works for this class is your healing is increased by 10% for each of your heal over time effects on the target. So it's really strong for small group content specifically, because it's easier to maintain max hots on the group, right? Versus like a raid, it's pretty much impossible to have a hot rolling the entire raid group, at any given moment, right? There's no way you can get full rejuvenations on 25 different targets sustained. That is pretty much no way. We also have pretty good single target damage, especially if you're cat weaving with like rake and you're building combo points, because you can get so many different dots on the target. We have Sunfire, we have Moonfire, we have Rip. There's just a lot of ticking dots. Also have an awesome utility buff here called Mark of the Wild. Infuse a friendly target with the power of the wild, increasing the versatility by 3% for 60 minutes. Versatility is, I know it's not one of our main stats, but it's really good just for like a flat damage reduction in groups. So a lot of groups will run a Druid just for that Mark of the Wild buff alone, and also stuff like battle res. We do have a lot of other utilities just besides Mark of the Wild, but Mark of the Wild is one of the main things that we bring to the group. Another awesome strength of the class is you're able to heal while you're doing damage, and you're able to damage while you're healing. So effectively, like for Restoration Shaman, just for example, if I'm just sitting there casting chain heals, I'm not doing damage. I kind of am through like if I have like an acid rain down or something and a ticking flame shock. But with this class, you can throw out your dots and then you can just start healing and you can still do really good damage. So that's kind of one of the pros of playing a dot class like this. Now, one of the major weaknesses of the class is we don't really have an interrupt. You can spec into Skull Bash, which is on the left-hand side of the tree. But if you look at the nodes here, there's not an easy way to get to it, and you're going to have to spend a lot of points to get to it. So a lot of the times it's not taken. Another con of the class is the DPS rotation is a little bit complex because you're having to shift in and out of these different forms. So it can be one of those sort of higher skill ceiling classes. And another con, of course, is there's just a lot of maintenance with the class, right? You got a lot of different hots rolling. You got to sort of maintain those hots, and you got to have them up before the damage comes out. So that's kind of what makes it proactive, right? So that can kind of make the class more difficult to play. So In-Cap Roar, just kind of going into utility here. In-Cap Roar is pretty good for like an AoE interrupt. The problem is you can't use it on bosses, right? It's not technically an interrupt. It's an incapitate, right? So In-Cap Roar is still really good, especially on like fortified weeks where you have just you just need that AoE interrupt for a lot of different trash. So that's one of the great things about the spec. And just to kind of show you how this ability works is it will auto shift you into bear form. So you just press it does the roar, and it interrupts everybody. For utility, we also have Mark of the Wild, which we kind of discussed earlier, increasing the versatility of your group by 3%. Really strong ability there. We also have Ursol's Vortex, which is really good. So what it is, it's basically this circle of wind that you put on the ground, and it's going to slow the enemies in it by 50%. And if they try to run out of it, it's going to pull them back in. So it's really good if you need to, kite trash. So just to show you kind of what that looks like, I've got it here in my bars. You just drop it, the circle of wind. And it's really good if you need to kill some mobs off your tank, or even if you have some sort of like fixated mob on you. It's really good for like fixate mechanics to just get a mob off you or a party member. We also bring Iron Bark, So the target skin becomes as tough as iron wood, reducing damage taken by 20% for 12 seconds. Really good for the tank or anybody who has like some sort of heavy dot on them. And of course, we also have Battle Res, one of the few classes in the game that has it, although we are seeing more classes get the battle res introduced to them, like Paladin. Also, while we're talking about utility, we also have Typhoon. I recommend to run Typhoon on Sanguine weeks. When you got those mobs that are standing in those pools and they're getting healed up, you can throw a Typhoon out and you can just kind of push them out. And then we also have Wild Charge, which is recommended to take on something like an Entangling week, because you get those roots entangled on your character, you get that circle around you, and whenever you move out of the circle, the roots snap. So what you can do is you can see when non-shape shifted, fly to an ally's position. You can just click on them, Wild Charge, fly out of the roots. Easy way to handle the mechanic. For incorporeal weeks, you'll want to be speccing into Hibernate. Forces the enemy target to sleep for up to 40 seconds. Any damage will awaken the target. I believe it is spammable and it's not on a cooldown. So if for whatever reason your group needs you to spec into that, you do have the option to handle incorporeal. And then of course we also have Soothe, which is great for the raging affix, because you can dispel one of those raging affixes from one of those mobs. So really good, because during raging, those mobs are immune to CC. If you can't CC them, they're going to do more damage to your tank. So really good to take Soothe on raging weeks. And to be honest, you're going to be taking Soothe actually all of the time because you can't get into Stampeding Roar without it. All right, now talking about our tier set a little bit. Our 2 set, you and your Grove Guardians nourishes now heal 2 additional allies within 45 yards at 40% effectiveness. Blizzard has been pushing Nourish on us for the past season or 2. They keep buffing it, but it's still not strong enough of an ability in our talent tree to take at the moment. But that's our 2 set. Our 4 set, assuming clear casting now causes your regrowth to also cast Nourish onto a nearby injured ally at 200% effectiveness, preferring those with your heal every time effects. I'd say one of the pros of this set is it's pretty much passive, right? Your clear casting is going to pop up. You're going to be casting those extra Nourishes, and then your Grove Guardians are going to be casting those Nourishes as well. So it's just kind of like additional spot healing, very passive. You don't have to think about it too much. So kind of easy set to play around. And that's kind of a good thing, because I think Rest of Druid already has enough things to worry about in their rotation. All right, so talking a little bit about stat priority really quick. We got Crit, Haste, Mastery, and Versatility. This is a hot-based class, so the reason I have so much versatility is because I'm in PvP gear right now, but Haste is going to be your main stat in pretty much all content outside of PvP, or versatility is your main stat. Since it's a hot-based class, so the way Haste works, increases attack speed, spell casting speed, and energy regeneration. So the more Haste you have, the more ticks you get out of your hots. So that's why Haste is so important. At least at tier 2 below this, we have Mastery. So the way our Mastery works is your healing is increased by 10.7% for each of your Restoration Heal every time effects on the target. The more hots you have out, the more healing over time you're going to do. So each hot buffs each other. So that's one of the reasons that our Mastery is pretty strong. And then we also have Crit and Versatility, and they're going to both be at the bottom at an equal weight. And of course, over these secondary stats, Atom level is always going to be your main stat that you focus on. You only want to be really looking at secondary stats if you're within a couple eye level if they're within a couple eye level of each other. All right, now just kind of going over some of your core healing spells. You're going to have Regrowth here. Heals a friendly target for 24,000, and the initial heal is a 40% increased crit chance if the target's already affected by regrowth. So this is going to be like if you played any other similar classes, like your Flash of Light, your Quick Heal, right? Like your Healing Surge. And it also applies a hot effect. See here, I cast it, I got regrowth, and now my next regrowth will have a 40% increased crit chance. So that's regrowth. You're also going to have rejuvenation. Heals the target for 25,000 over 15 seconds. And you can see here, while you're in your Tree of Life, healing is increased by 50% and mana cost is reduced by 30%. We also have Wild Growth. That's going to be like your AoE heal. Heals up to 5 injured allies within 30 yards for 16,000 over 7 seconds. The healing starts high and then it declines over the duration. So just to show you what this looks like, it's got a cast time. It's going to put a hot on you. It's going to put a hot on your whole group. It's going to kind of diminish after I think like 8 seconds. And then we also have Life Bloom. Heals a target for 31,000 over 15 seconds. When it expires, the target's instantly healed for 17,000. So maybe active 2 targets at a time, and this actually gives you 3 stacks of your mastery. So this is probably your main heal to have up at all times. Now you can see maybe active on 2 targets at a time. Get away from this, guys. So that is due to this Undergrowth talent. So you may Life Bloom 2 targets at once, but Life Bloom healing is reduced by 10%. So if you're running Mythic Plus content, I highly recommend taking Undergrowth. So basically, if you're running 2 Life Blooms, you're going to be getting 6 stacks of your mastery instead of 3. So that's one of the reasons it's so strong. And then finally, kind of goes into your main rotation is Efflorescence, and it's actually stronger than what the tooltip actually shows due to how talents works. The talents that work around it, but the way it works is grows a healing blossom at the target location, restoring 3,000 health to 3 injured allies within 10 yards every 1.8 seconds for 30 seconds, limit to 1. So we drop it on the ground, there's a green circle. If you're standing in it, you get the heal effect. Now, we also have Spring Blossoms up here, which is a completely separate hot from your talent tree. That each target healed by Efflorescence is healed for an additional 2,000 over 6 seconds. It's really good, again, because it's a separate hot that works into your mastery. So that's why I really recommend to take Spring Blossoms. Now, I guess also while we're talking about it, we also have Verdancy. A lot of your healing is going to be coming from this talent. So when Life Bloom blooms, up to 3 targets within your Efflorescence are healed for 12,000. So going back to Life Bloom, so you can see here, when Life Bloom expires, when it expires is when it blooms. So when it does the bloom, that's when Verdancy procs. It's going to heal 3 targets within your Efflorescence for 12,000. So this is, in my opinion, one of the things that make Resto Druid difficult, because this is going to be a ton of your healing is going to be coming from Verdancy. So that's why when I'm playing Resto Druid, I favor melee comps who are all going to be standing in my Efflorescence. So you can already see how powerful this Efflorescence spell is. You're getting Spring Blossoms off of it, and you're also getting Verdancy off of it. You're also getting the flat healing from Efflorescence, right? So definitely one of those spells that's a little bit harder to keep up on heavy movement fights. It can really eat through your mana if you're, casting this over and over. But it's definitely going to be probably your top 1 or 2 priority spells between that and Life Bloom. Also have Swiftman here. Let's talk about that really quick. So it consumes a Regrowth, Wild Growth, or Rejuvenation to instantly heal an ally for 60,000. And then Swiftman heals the target for 21,000 over 9 seconds. So the reason it heals over time is because we're taking Grove Trending here. And the beauty of this, the problem with Swiftman is it consumes the heal over time effect, which kind of goes against your mastery. But when you take Grove Trending, you keep that mastery stacked, so it doesn't hurt you by consuming the hot effect. But basically, you're going to be using Swiftman for spot healing, just to kind of help you in a pinch. When Regrowth isn't fast enough, you'll just Swiftman the target. Very effective and efficient heal to use. We also have Grove Guardians here. Summon to Treant, which will immediately cast Swiftman on your current target, healing for 20,000. So when you summon it, boom, you get a Swiftman for that quick healing, and then it's going to start casting Nourish on a nearby ally. So the way it works is you get 3 charges of it. It's on my E ability here. You drop it, a tree comes out, and he starts healing people. And I believe it works out to where when this expires, I'll be able to summon a new one. So you should always have one up. And of course, if you're in a pinch, you can summon them all 3 at once if you want. But you can pretty much, you can see it's coming off cooldown. He just expired. Pretty much always have one up. So I also want to talk about Omen of Clarity here. So you're healing over time. Your life balloon has a 4% chance to cause a clear casting state. So if you notice with life bloom, you'll notice how fast it ticks. So if you look at my character up here, whoops, show myself. But you can see on this right here, right, how often it's ticking. Each tick is a 4% chance. Now, when you get 2 life blooms through undergrowth here, now you're getting essentially an 8% chance instead of a 4% chance to get into this clear casting state. So the clear casting state is going to essentially make your regrowth cost no mana. Best part about clear casting isn't even that, it's what works into your 4 set. So, or is it, I believe it's your 4 set. So when you consume that clear casting state, you're going to be casting and Nourish also on a nearby target. And Nourish does a lot of healing, a lot of single target healing. So just something to keep in mind whenever you get a clear casting state, you want to be casting regrowth for obviously the free regrowth and then those Nourish procs. We also have Nature Swiftness here, which is really good. Typically just use it on regrowth, 1 minute cooldown. It's another quick spot heal if you need it. But it just makes your next regrowth, rebirth, or entangling roots instant and free. So, you know, just, I guess depending on your mana situation, I pretty much use it on cooldown. Some people save it for when they're in a pinch, but, you know, each to their own. I like the free heal from it. Alright, then we also have Flourish here, which is a awesome ability to use if you get a bunch of hots out on all your different targets, because it's going to increase the effectiveness of those hots by 25%, and then it's also going to add 6 seconds onto those existing hots. So the way I like to use it is I spread my hots out between all my different targets and then cast Flourish. It can also be really good with something like Convoke the Spirits, because they're both on a 1 minute cooldown. So what you can do, it can be overkill, so you need to be careful. It just kind of depends. But what you can do is you can convoke, and it can get a whole bunch of different hots out, all your different targets quickly, and then you can flourish on top of it to just basically increase their effectiveness. So a really strong talent, highly recommend taking it. And then we also have Adaptive Swarm, and I'm not going to get too much into this, but essentially it's an ability that you put out, and it kind of splits in between your different targets. It kind of jumps from target to target, and it's going to buff your periodic healing. So it's more of like a maintenance ability that you're always using on cooldown. And I highly recommend to take Unbridled Swarm with it. Without Unbridled Swarm, it's not that strong of a talent. This is essentially going to, it has a 60% chance to split into 2 swarms each time it jumps. So just to kind of show you how it works, see if I can put it on this target. Put it on him. You can see we got 3 stacks of it. It's doing some healing over time. When this gets down to 0, it's going to jump to a new target. It has a 60% chance to split each time. So you can see there, it didn't split. It's going to this guy now. And you can see here, it's at 2 stacks, and it split. So I can, on top of this guy, do another Adaptive Swarm, and now it's up to 4 stacks. So it's not 3 anymore, now it's 4. So now it has a high chance to split again, and essentially what you can do is you can get this stack pretty much maintained on your entire group. So we're down to 3 now. I'm gonna put on this guy again. And you can see he's got 3 stacks on him now, and it's split to 2 more targets. This guy's got 2 stacks, and this guy's got 2 stacks. So you're kind of starting, without getting lost in the sauce too much here, you're kind of creating this chain reaction of swarms. So that's something, it's really important to manage that. I have a WeakAuras to track it. You just heard it there, it's that crunch sound. And that's telling me, you can see how I'm highlighted here. It's telling you the most efficient target to put your swarm onto. So So I'll probably have like a separate video on that in the future. Just so you know, you want to maintain that as much as you can. All right, and since this is a beginner's guide, I'm not going to get into the DPS rotation too much. You can see in my tree, I have not gone into the cat weaving form here. I've gone into the Moonkin form, where I'm taking Starfire, Sunfire, Star Surge, Improved Sunfire, and then I also have Moonfire as well. So we'll go over that really quickly. It's pretty simple. Just to show you real quick, we got a Moonkin form. It turns you into this big owl dude. It increases your spell damage by 10%. Most of the time, I'm not even in it. It just kind of depends. But it does use a global. But if you know you're in a spot where your tank's not taking too much damage, it's kind of like a tyrannical weak, trash isn't hitting too hard, you can come into this form, you do a little bit extra damage. So we took Improved Sunfire. So Sunfire is basically just a dot that you put out. I'll show you how it works. It's going to be one of your maintenance dots. And since we took Improved Sunfire, it put that dot on every single dummy here. So if I did not take Improved Sunfire, it only put it on one target. So if you're running Mythic Plus, make sure to take Improved Sunfire. And then we also have Starfire. It's going to be an AoE ability. And it's just going to blast this group of target dummies here. We have a Wrath. It's going to be your single target ability. Just does a very basic ability, very quick cast time. You're going to be using it on bosses. And then you also have Star Surge, which we talented into here. It's on a 10-second cooldown. Launch a surge of stellar energies, dealing 35,000 astral damage. So just to show you what that looks like. So the way your rotation kind of works is you're going to want to maintain Sunfire, Moonfire, as many targets as you can. And then spam Starfire or Wrath, depending if it's AoE or single target. And of course, weave in Star Surge. The next ability we have is Convoke the Spirits here. It's going to be just a quick, efficient heal that you can put out on your group. It doesn't cost mana or anything. And it's kind of one of those abilities you'll be using on cooldown. You can save it defensively as well. I like to play a little bit more offensively with it. But the way it works is if there's nobody to heal, it's going to be casting just sort of a sum of spells. It's going to be casting Moonfires, Rakes. In Feral form, it's going to be casting Sunfire, Star Surges, Wraths. So just to show you how it works, I'm going to press it. It's going to do a channel, and it's just doing all sorts of crazy stuff. It does a ton of healing. It does a lot of damage. It's on a 1-minute cooldown. Pretty much want to be using it on a 1-minute cooldown. Now, like I said, you can use it defensively or offensively, depending on what you feel suits your group. So really strong ability there. You can also take Incarnation Tree of Life if you want to. And just, I guess, to explain it, it turns you into a big tree. It buffs your Rejuve and Wild Growth. They cost less mana. And then it buffs your Regrowth. And it makes your Regrowth an instant cast. So it's not going to let me change right now. This Convoke's on cooldown. But Tree of Life is a 3-minute cooldown versus Convoke being a 1-minute cooldown. So that's why I like to take Convoke over Tree of Life. One thing I did forget to mention here, the reason Convoke is a 1-minute cooldown is because I'm taking this Cenarius Guidance here. Convoke the Spirit's cooldown is reduced by 50%, and its duration and number of spells cast is reduced by 25%. One thing to note also with Tranquility that I forgot to mention earlier is you kind of want to ramp your hots around Tranquility, right? Because you remember our mastery, the more hots we have out, the more our abilities hit for. So Tranquility used by itself isn't super strong, but if you have a whole bunch of different hots rolling out, it really increases the value of your Tranquility. So a lot of people call this kind of the ramp phase, right? Where you can kind of ramp your hots up into a more effective spell. So just know that when you use a Tranquility, try to get at least a Wild Growth out and a few Rejuvenations. You have your Life Blooms out as well. Typically, that's enough to top off your group. So kind of our healing rotation, I guess. Your main priority is obviously going to be Life Bloom. Life Bloom and Efflorescence, you're going to want to have Life Bloom probably on your tank. It could be on yourself. It could be on another DPS. And then also, you're going to want to have Efflorescence down as well. Your number 3 priority is probably going to be Clear Casting procs. Just because, obviously, you're getting a free heal with regrowth, which is really important, but also the way it works with our tier set this season. You're also going to be making sure that you're kind of weaving in rejuvenations during downtime, just because the way, our hots work with our mastery. It's definitely one of those proactive spells. It's not going to do much healing unless you got a bunch of them out, kind of juicing each other, right? Rejuvenation can also be a little bit taxing on your mana if you're throwing a whole bunch of them out, but it's key to get rejuvenations out during huge AoE phases. And outside of that, everything is kind of situational. That's one of the great things about healing is you don't have much of a rotation. You got kind of your priority spells, and then depending on what happens in the fight, who stands in the mechanic, you got to kind of adapt on your own. So another really important tip too, let's talk about raid frames really quick. I use something called Voodoo, and you really need a way, especially on Restoration Druid, to track your hots, right? So on Voodoo, right, here's my raid frame. And as I am putting these hots out, I can see them here. And that's really important to know because, again, everything kind of goes back to your mastery. So you don't really know when to use your Flourish, when to use your Tranquility without being able to effectively track your hots. So if you're using Voodoo, you can go into your Voodoo options here. Yeah, if you go under panels here, and then you go to hot icons, and you can set up, what hots you want to appear on your bars, on your raid frames. So I've got Regrowth, Life Bloom, Rejuve, Wild Growth, Germination. If you are raiding, you'll need to set up a way to track both rejuvenations that kind of get put on your target, and then also Adaptive Swarm as well, because Adaptive Swarm does count as a hot. So you can see here, I use it. There's my stacks there. And then I was also talking a little bit earlier about a WeakAuras for tracking Adaptive Swarm, because on that 60% split, you want to be using it on the highest stacked target, right? So if you're using on the highest stacked target, you're building up this number of stacks, and each time that splits, the more stacks you have, the more chances you have to get that 60% split. So that's kind of hard to track by yourself. So I use a WeakAuras just to tell me what the most efficient target is to drop Adaptive Swarm on. A couple other abilities I forgot to cover. We have Nature's Vigil. So for 15 seconds, all single target healing. Also damages a nearby enemy target for 20% of the healing done. So this is just damage boost. You don't want to be saving this, especially in Mythic Plus. You want to be using that on cooldown. So all the healing that you're doing during an encounter gets converted back into damage at 20% effectiveness. Really strong talent. We also have Innervate. This is going to be another one that I'd be using on cooldown. I would use it towards the start of a pool and not towards the middle or the end, because at the start of the pool, the tank's going to be taking a lot of damage. The group's going to be taking a lot of damage. If you pop it at the end of a pool, I just feel like you're losing a lot of effectiveness. There's not as much damage coming out. A couple mobs are dead. Getting good use out of Innervate can be a little bit tricky. It looks very straightforward, but the timing of it, I think, is a very important thing to learn. In terms of enchants, I'm not going to go over every single thing here. I'm just going to put a screenshot, and you can take that as you will, in terms of enchanting your gear. We also have consumables here. I'll just put a screenshot of that as well. Alright guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.